So Nikki was my firstborn, and she was born in 1978. And she was just a beautiful, pleasant little baby. And that's how she was throughout her life. She was engaged to be married, and the young man wanted her to have breast implants. And she went through that surgery, and she was, the doctor had given her drugs for pain, and he would refill her prescriptions. And so about 7 years ago is when we found out that she was using, I don't even know what all the drugs were, but she was using a lot of different drugs. And at that point, we began to try to help her to get into different rehabilitation centers to help her overcome this addiction. Nikki, 2 years ago, decided to go to Colorado with her sister. And finally, she came to the determination that she wanted help. And she went to a caseworker who was able to help her to get into the facility there. They had ministers and priests, and she felt so wonderful about it. Everyone saw Nikki back to who God created her to be. And everything was just going wonderful until that night that she picked my daughter up at the airport, and she was really happy, and they were laughing and joking and singing Christian songs, and she was playing with the children, and she was gonna go out. And that night is when she went with someone, and she did drugs, and she died that night. My heart is so broken. And I am so sad. But because I know Jesus is my Savior, I trust Him. And I know that it will be my new normal to live with a broken heart. But I do have a peace that transcends anything you could ever imagine. I know that she did accept Jesus as her Lord and Savior. I trust Him, and I know she's there in heaven, and that I will see her again. And I remember when my daughter called me, and I picked up the phone and I saw it was my daughter, and I knew at that moment that there was something wrong with Nikki. And then when she told me, I had a feeling of a verse that I had read a couple years before, and I thought it was kind of an oxymoron, and it was James 1:2-4, I believe, where he talks about having joy in your sorrows. And you will have trials and tribulations, but you will have joy. And I thought back then that it was an oxymoron, that I just was like, oh, I didn't really understand it. But in that moment, when I was sitting there with the Lord talking to Him about Nikki passing away, I thought of that verse, and I had such an enlightenment about what that meant, because I was really sad that my daughter had passed away. But at the same time, I trusted the Lord, and I had been praying for years for her. And I had a peace that I don't think I ever knew before. And I trusted Him. Joyful sorrow is a signifier of trusting the Lord, no matter what trial or tribulation or problem that's going on in the world or with you yourself. That's what peace is, knowing that even though you're going through this traumatic experience in your life, and in Nikki's case, it was drug addiction, and for us, it was watching our daughter's life being destroyed by this. But peace is knowing, even in the midst of all of that sorrow, that you can trust Him and that you will have joy again.